with Cory Yeoman, head football coach of the Penn Kingsmen. Cory, first of all, let's just get things started and have a good time here with this project, because when you're putting together a project of this magnitude that's spanning 60 years of a community kind of growing up and kind of evolving into what it's been. Now, you grew up in this program, you've been a part of this your entire life with the exception of the years you were at the Miami of Ohio. What is your earliest recollection of Penn football?
Well, earliest recollection, I can remember early on the bad part of it. Dad was up here 2 years prior to Chris coming, and it was rough. It was brutal. You know, it was a tough situation for everybody involved, and those years were, you know, naturally hard on my dad, and it's tough, you know, because you're how you're driven and how you're made, and you know what you want, and so that was tough. And then I can remember 1973 very, very well, and when Chris came and you know, brought Charlie as well, and the transformation that took place.
One thing that has been talked about a lot during our filming with people and talking with people has a phrase that's come through. Chris used it, Dr. Spiker has used it, Dr. Jerry Thacker has used it, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And a portion of the book is going to be, to start the book, is going to be entitled The Penn Way. So as you recall the early stages of the program and how the Penn Way has kind of taken on a life and really an animal of its own, what does the Penn Way mean to you as you've seen it come full circle?
I think it's what Chris and that original staff created to how things should be done. Not that there's times that it doesn't go the way you want it to go, but there's a certain way and there's a certain approach and there's a certain protocol that you follow, and if you do those things, you put yourself in a pretty good position to be successful.
Would you consider it a physical thing, or would you consider it an emotional and a mental mindset?
I don't think you can separate it. I think it's all of the above. I think number one, your heart and what you want. I think that drives it. I think in your mind how you do things and how you set up and how you plan and what you expect and what you do, the daily, the weekly, the monthly, the yearly things that have to take place for not only the coaches but the players in two different realms. And I think just the effort that you put in physically, both as a staff and as a player doing both of those things, you know, what it takes to be a Penn Kingsman.
Over the years, as I've spent time, the last 20 years with Coach Mike Lightfoot at Bethel, he refers to a phrase called, you have to embrace the grind. Is that similar to what we're talking about here?
Well, I mean, that's part of it. It's work. It's a tough sport if you love it, and as a player, as a coach, and that's part of it. That's what makes it special. It's one of those things that not everybody can do, and you look at the boys that come in from year to year, and it changes from year to year. They know they're coming to someplace special, and we talk about the long black line and what that means, and to do that, you understand that you're not the first young man that's ever experienced that and had to work and do things the Penn way and follow those footsteps that on the gridiron that are there, that were put there by, you know, thousands of tough kids before you.
I want you to take me back and talk to me about what it was like with Wally Yeoman now working with Chris Giesman in that first year, if you can recall that. Now, once again, you're pretty young at this stage of your life, but you're a smart enough guy to be able to remember some of the dynamics. What did Dad say coming home after those first couple meetings with Chris Giesman and as that first season kind of developed? What can you recall?
Well, I know my dad had been a head coach for years and been an assistant coach under some great staffs. Naturally, Chris's journey and my dad's journey were similar. They both had early starts at Rensselaer, which is kind of unique, but they were never on the same staff down there at Rensselaer at the same time. Both being head coaches, I mean, they bounced ideas off each other quite a bit. But I can remember my dad's, coming home and talking to my mom and listening. My dad was impressed with the new young guy that had some great ideas and great energy and had a plan for how he wanted to do things. And it was going to be an uphill grind, but it was, could he pull it off? No one was really sure. But he had a plan, he had ideas, and he was impressive that way. The way his mind worked and the way he had things laid out impressed my dad, and that's a hard thing to do.
All right, I want you to take me back to your first year in 1977, a sophomore on the varsity wearing jersey number 89. You were a 5'11", 180-pound kid. The team went 7-3 that year, 5-3 and it actually was, if I'm not mistaken, it was the first year of the Northern Indiana Conference, so you kind of had a chance to go through some of that. So give us an idea of what it was like as a sophomore, putting on that gold helmet for the first time.
Well, it's something you dream about your whole life. I mean, you go to these games as you're around Penn football all the time with your dad coaching there and having that great opportunity and being able to be a young kid and being around it and be around the coaches and the players and you can remember going to games and sitting up in those stands and talking to your buddies and talking about, man, what it's going to feel like that first time we get to run through that tunnel and put that gold helmet on. I mean, it's still to this day, makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up and gets me excited. It's just something special, and unless you've experienced it, you don't know what I mean. But it is truly something special. So I was excited, and naturally having the chance to play with my older brother Trent. He was a senior that year, and we were excited then. Naturally, the freshmen weren't in the building back then. The freshmen were at the middle school. So really, that sophomore year was our first year of actually being in the high school, and it was a new and exciting time, and we had high aspirations, just like every other kid that played Penn football.
Okay, so moving on to your junior season, what a unique season this was. Chris talks about this story a lot. You were injured in what they call
I'm surprised Chris didn't talk about the story about number 89 being a tight end and starting 10 games and never caught a pass. And the only thing I did do of relevance besides drive block was I got one pass interference called on me, offensive pass interference. I figured they're not going to throw the ball to me ever. I was sure not going to let somebody else catch the ball for crying out loud. I think I should have just put a 70 number and just played unbalanced the whole time. That's basically what I was, an offensive tackle playing tight end.
But the thing about it is, your junior year, you guys go 10-1, unbeaten in the conference. But for you were part of the Saturday Massacre. He refers to this
Black Saturday,
where you guys were doing a scrimmage and you were injured, so you had to sit out the whole year. Obviously, I want you to take me back to, I know that's a painful time because you lost a whole year. I mean, and then when you look at Chris's big picture, what he always talks about, you only have X amount of football games in you. Mm-hmm. And so in other words, you had 11 football games taken away from you because of an injury. So a couple things are going to happen about that. Number one, what do you remember most about not being able to play? And did you go into the mindset of being an assistant coach, or did you just, man, I can't wait to get back out there? How did you handle that?
Well, I try to think about ways that I could outsmart the doctor and remove the cast and do all that, and naturally my parents, there'd be none of that going on. So it was hard. I mean, I tell you, the first time your buddies run onto the field and you're not with them, that just rips at your heart, and it's hard for anybody that's ever experienced that. I mean, it is one of the worst experiences ever. You wish your buddies the best, and you're the biggest fan, and you help out any way you possibly can, but your heart, it just aches when you can't be a part of it, something you've worked so hard for and waited so hard more for the rest of your life. So it was a tough time, and luckily those guys had a whale of a year and played outstanding, and had some, some huge games. I mean, being able to beat Mishawaka over at Mishawaka, and Tallman driving us down and throwing the ball to Lonnie, and scoring in that game. It's just an outstanding game with great players playing in it. Rogie had a monster game on the other side and had a big run and took the lead, and we were able to have that final march and go down and do that, and it was a heck of a ball game.
Did it change the way you viewed the game by being on the sideline your junior season?
I'm going to tell you what it does. If you could, I thought I was driven before that. I was definitely driven after that, because you knew that something you loved could be taken away from you that easily, and it made you work a heck of a lot harder that off season, and what you did in your approach, because you knew in a blink of an eye it could all be over. So I think that really, I'd hate to say an injury is a blessing, and I thought I got after it, preparing for it early on. But until it's taken away, and anybody's ever experienced that their junior or sophomore year, I think they're driven a little bit more than next year, because of it. They understand how lucky they are to play it and how quick it can be taken away from you.
All right, we're going to move forward to 1979, the first 11-win team in the history of Penn football. What a team that was. Kenny Kiter, quarterback. Our good friend Kent Piotrowski was on the team. Mark Ward, your running back, yourself. But a couple interesting things happened during that year, that Mishawaka game. Battle of two unbeaten teams, two great defensive teams. However, the Penn offense in the Mishawaka game controlled the entire first quarter. You didn't even get a chance to get in the game. And Coach Giesman tells the wonderful story about you going nuts on the sideline at the end of the first quarter, because the defense hadn't even been in the ball game yet. You were so upset about not being able to play. But I want you to I want to hear your version of that.
Well, first of all, the pictures are legendary outside of that great stadium, and that Coach Giesman's created there, and what he's created, and over 10,000 people flooded, standing room only. People are surrounding the fence, the fans. It's packed, it's electric, it's like nothing that's ever happened before, at Penn High School. It was an unbelievable event. I can remember trying to get into the game field, and it was hard to get through all the crowd just to try to get in the fence to warm up and do everything you had to do. Great experience for us to get to play in a game like that. They kick off to us, and we do what we normally do, have a methodical drive of about, it seems like, 18 plays, and drive down and score. Exciting, take the lead 7-0. We kick off to them, they run it back for a touchdown, so the defense never gets on the field, and then they kick off to us, and we're marching it down about 8 plays when the first quarter ends. And our offense is playing great. Everything's going. We had a bad breakdown on a kickoff coverage, but it's one of the biggest games of my life, definitely, for sure. And I haven't even touched the field yet. So yeah, I was a little upset. I want to get in, and enjoy some of the fun the rest of the guys are getting to have.
Well, the game turned out to be a positive one for the Kingsmen, as they were able to win the game and really started to build some nice local rivalry during the Mishawaka and Penn during that portion, the later stages of the 70s. And John Rogaman, as you mentioned the year before, I mean, there was really a neat rivalry going on between Penn and Mishawaka at that time.
Well, great program. I mean, naturally, the year before Chris came here, I think we got beat 60-6 at Mishawaka, and it was a brutal game. And then Chris came back, and I think we lost maybe 19-12 or something, and people were singing and playing the fight songs, the band was playing Happy Days Are Here Again. We lost the ball game, but just what had happened in a 1 year period of time, and was something special in that 73. In the 74 team, Geese actually beat that Mishawaka team who went on to the state finals that year. So there's been some huge games naturally. Those games in the 70s as well. That 78 game was a great football game, and they had loaded with great players, and Penn had some decent guys as well. So no, it's just as we grow up, we're all living in the same neighborhood, and we're all there close friends. But there's a lot of respect for on our part for them, and I would think the other way around.
And finishing out, once again, looking back on being a senior, wearing jersey number 77, 6 foot, 204 pounds to start the season. I don't know, as you went into the playoffs where you were still at 204 pounds, I'm sure you were probably a little bit under that. Coach Giesman tells the story that you're one of you're the smallest Division I defensive lineman of all time. I mean, you excelled at a position where traditionally you need a lot of size. So that tells me one thing, that you were the smarter and you worked harder than everybody else.
Well, I don't know about that, but I did have the opportunity to play with some great guys. I was surrounded by great people, and that's the beauty of being on some great defenses. I think great defense is knowing where your help is, and playing with great guys, and defense is an attitude and how you play. And I think that was instilled in me at a young age, and having a position coach like Don Mon, who was outstanding, and all the things he taught me about football and defensive line play and game planning, how to approach the game, were outstanding. So I was coached extremely well and played with 10 great guys on that Wild Bunch defense in 1979.
Coach Giesman said that you play with a little bit of an edge about you, and I think that probably, along with the drive, that probably was the reason you were able to go to college and play football.
Well, you know what? I mean, there's a certain way, again, back to the Penn way, a certain way you play the game and how you play, and you're going to get after it and play, every snap at 100 miles an hour, and there's a reason they're called the Wild Bunch, and that's how we play.
All right, a painful memory. First regional game, you go on the road at Hobart. Cold, sleet, it's a mess over there. And
Okay, first of all, check your watch. If anybody has the office pool, how long are we into the interview before we bring up the Penn Hobart game from the Hobart guy across from me? Okay, go ahead.
So the Hobart guys are wearing cutoff shirts. You guys decided you're going to come out with no shirts on. A crazy Hobart comes up with a really neat play on the first offensive series, kind of set the tone. But it turned out to be, and once again, we've talked about this 100 times, you and I. The Coach Howell, Coach Kerr talk about it being, and many of the Hobart people consider it the greatest football game in the history of a program that was traditionally in the top 10 every single year. Now let's put it in historical perspective. This is a Penn program that it really is just now starting to come into its own. Chris is there, 6 years now? Mm-hmm. So think about that from a historical perspective. Hobart's greatest football game comes against this new team, if you will, only 6 years into it, and they still consider it one of the greatest games. What do you remember about the game, and fondly, if there is such a thing in this case, what do you remember about the game, the greatest game that most people feel in the region is the greatest football game?
Well, first of all, look at their staff. A legendary staff themselves. I think about the staffs that Geese created, Coach Howell, the staff. I know, Coach Kerr and I are close friends, and the defensive coordinator, the legendary defense Hall of Famer, great coach, great friend, and I get why they were as good as they were. His whole staff was that way. They could coach the game. They had tough physical kids that played the game the way it was supposed to be played, very similar to what takes place at Penn. It was intense. Very similar type people, very similar type kids. Coaching staffs very similar. Everybody was highly driven on both sidelines. And when that happens, usually something special happens, and it was a heck of a ball game. And they did it. Their quarterback had a career night. Sure. He did a great job. He did some things that no one had done to us all year long, and throwing the football, and wide receivers made some great plays, but it was a war, that's for sure, and we were shooting at the end zone down inside the 20-yard line at the end of the game when the time ran out, and it was a heck of a ball game. And unfortunately for the Kings and the Kingsman Nation and all my buddies in my senior year, we lost that game, and shoot, still hurts today, because if nothing invested, nothing, no sorry, and there was a lot invested in that team.
28 wins and 5 losses through your 3 years of high school, 22-3 in the Northern Indiana Conference action. So if you look back on it, that's a pretty good resume at the high school. So now that catapults you to go play football at the University of Miami, Ohio. Coach Trussell was there at the time, good friend of both of ours. What was on your mind back home when you were at Miami of Ohio, or were you even remotely thinking about what was happening with Dad and Chris and the guys at Freed Field?
Well, once a Kingsman, always a Kingsman, and naturally, every Friday night, no matter if we were on the road or at home, I was trying to get a hold of my mom or dad and find out, how the Kingsmen did. And yeah, you can move away, but you're always still right there. Your heart's always there. And no, we got updates all the time. And that was back before cell phones, so there's phone calls and waiting for calls to get out and get in. But no, it was always on our mind. And I'd always liked, when Dad would get home and we'd talk about the game, what happened, what good and bad, to give me a breakdown of how the game went, which was great. And they had a heck of a run. Ending my senior year at Miami was my younger brother's Todd's senior year back at Penn, and they went on that great run and won, the first state championship. So it was a school had a great experience at Miami, but your heart's still at Penn.
All right, now we're going to fast forward to coming home. What was it like coming home, having been away, if you will? You had a different football experience for the first time in your life. You saw it at the big time level. Give us an idea what it was like to just come back home during the summers, and once that career was over, did you feel different about the game of football having experienced at the college level? The reason I bring this up, because I've had people tell me, even professional athletes to this day, saying my high school experience was the greatest experience in the world. Here's guys who have played 15 years in the NFL, and they still talk to me about it was the best experience of my life. Did you feel the same way?
100%. And I think I was lucky because I played at a place like Penn. I played for coaches like Coach Giesman, Coach Monhoot, and my dad. I mean, a great staff. I played with great guys. And I think a lot of it is you grow up with these guys, and you talk about it in elementary school lunch, and you talk about it in recess, and when you're in elementary school and when you're in the junior high school, you're playing and thinking about it, before long we're going to be out there. You're prepping for that, a huge part of your life for you to get your chance, and it was a blast. And it's if you try to put it in a ball, you can't. It's not about the championships are great and all the wins are great, but the relationships you make with all those guys, the funny things that happen both on the staff, when I was on the staff, or as a player. I mean, the funny things, guys just, somebody says something crazy at practice and you start laughing about that. When you get back together with the guys, that's the kind of stuff you talk about, and it's the relationships and the journey about what, that makes it special.
Now you come back and become an assistant coach with some of the guys who taught you, who have shaped your life forever. Now you become a contemporary. Did you ever feel in the early stages, or did the coaches make you feel different, or did they immediately embrace you and say, he's one of us?
You know what, my whole life as a little boy, I'd sneak down to the coach's office waiting for my dad. I'd go to practice, and every time I could, and as a little kid, and I'd like to sit outside of Gies's office and listen to my dad and the other coaches talk with Coach Giesman after practice and go over the positives and negatives. And like I used to say, I like to listen to coaches talk, coach talk, and it was one of my favorite things to do. And that was my dream my whole life, to be able to teach and coach football at Penn, and be a member of that, of that staff, and all those guys that I enjoyed the playing experience with. I would love to do that, and that was the goal at Miami. I can remember Coach Reed, who's the head coach at the time, said, okay, when we get done, Cory, GA, and do the GA thing and go on this guy. And I said, Coach, don't take this the wrong way, but if there's a job that opens up at Penn, I want to go back to Penn and coach, with my dad and Coach Giesman and Coach Monhoot. That's my dream. He asked me why, and I said, it's a special place, and I don't take this the wrong way, and it's not because I don't appreciate you guys and want to be here, but it's someplace special. It's home. That's what I want to be, and that's what I want to do. And it was a dream come true for me in 1984, being able to join that group.
Did you ever feel that you had to prove yourself as a coach as you did as a player with this group?
Well, I think, what people often ask about, what's the difference between playing here and coaching here? And I tell you what, I had the same feelings, the very same feelings that drove me as a player, drive me as a coach to, I do it through the boys. When I was coaching the defensive line or working with the defensive, if they made a good play, I felt like I made a good play. If we had a breakdown, I feel like I messed up and had a breakdown. So it was the same type of experience coaching as playing. The same emotions, I think, come through. The same nervousness, the jitters before the game, all that was the same. But it is a highly charged area, that's for sure.
After the Kingsmen won the title in 1983, the expectations went to a whole nother level, if not higher, if that's even remotely possible. Did the pressure of winning that first one and kind of getting it out of the way, and I remember Chris telling me something, the fact is, after they won the first one, it's like, why didn't we do this before? I mean, what did we do along the way that didn't get us to this point in time? So when those expectations are high like that, how did you feel about the expectation levels getting to an all new level when you're coming back and just being a part of that?
Well, first of all, people ask about the pressure and everything else out. I'm telling you what, every coach in that locker room puts more pressure on themselves than anything from the outside could ever happen. I mean, same with the guys. I mean, we're driven. Everybody is highly motivated and has high expectations. So that's one thing. But that year, that '84 team, we graduated a great group of guys. There's a reason they won the state championship, and those guys were good. And had clawed back, and John played in the, guy was hurt, so John started in the state championship game. But that's basically what we had as far as returning guys coming back that had played. And I think, they had a heck of a year. I mean, it was, they got after it. And I think that group, I put it, that was an amazing task for losing that many guys, 22, 23 guys, to be able to have the season they had that next year in '84.
All right, let's transition into you becoming an assistant coach and how your role evolved from being a first-year assistant. Who was the coach that mentored you the most as a position coach? Maybe on the Penn staff, maybe some guys from outside of the Penn football family, because football, as you alluded to, football coaches love to share with the other children, if you will.
Well, first of all, naturally, when I came back to the staff, I worked with the defensive line, what I'd played, and Coach Monhout took care of the outside linebackers and defensive ends back when we were playing a 50 back then. So, I mean, naturally, Coach Monhout, my position coach, was a huge influence. Getting to understand, naturally, being a defensive lineman all that time, getting to know how everything fit together, the front with the secondary. My dad was huge in that, and learned a lot about the game of football and how to defend and how to be not just a good defensive lineman, but how to be a good defense and how all the pieces fit together and the scheme and everything took place. So I think your mind broadens and widens, and you start taking in more information about how to defend things and how to go about being a good defense.
In hindsight, would you be happy with a young coach coming into your football program right now and being at the level you were at when you started your first year? Would you be excited about that young coach coming into your program, or would you be saying to him, hey, he's still got a lot to learn?
Well, you know what, to be honest with you, after doing this for 33, 34, I mean, I still have a lot to learn. I think when you get to the point where you think you've got it all figured out, it's probably time to hang it up, because when you're done learning, you're in trouble. I mean, because people are going to be going by. So I think, number one, you've got to find a person that's willing to learn. You have to find a person that can communicate well with not just the kids and the players, but with the other coaches and the people in the community and in the school setting. I think loyalty is important. I think work ethic is important. Getting up and getting after it, and professionalism and wanting to get better and wanting to learn and being open-minded and sharing ideas and going back and forth with people and just trying to always get better, whether you're same thing you did when you're playing. trying to find ways to get better. I think that's what you do as an assistant coach, and you understand you're part of a team. That's the beauty of the sport we play. There's 22 guys out there on offense, defense. You put all the special teams guys in. There's a lot of people that take part in making a football game, a football team successful, and that's the beauty of it. It's the ultimate team sport, and you need to buy into that and be a part of that team.
Emotionally, where were you at, knowing that you're a contemporary with your Hall of Fame father on the coaching staff? I mean, to me, we see it all the time in sports. Players and sons and fathers are reunited. You look back at the Griffeys in baseball, and Ken Griffey Jr. was up with his dad playing for the Reds, and we can see it all over the sports map. Where were you at and sitting in those coaches meetings with your dad and Coach Giesman, the first coaches meeting? What was it like for Cory Yeoman? Now he's a contemporary.
Well, I'm sitting up there, I have my pencil and pen ready and my paper, and my ears wide open, my mouth shut. You know what I mean? And just taking all of it in and writing it down and going through and making sure you don't screw something up. I mean, you want to be a good teammate. You want to bring something to the table to help any way you possibly can. A great staff already. So I mean, they'd won a lot of football games, a lot of championships long before ever I became on the staff. It was a dream come true for me. I had the opportunity to work with my dad. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm so lucky that I had that opportunity. I had the opportunity to work with my brothers now and coach with my brothers and coach with my brothers back then. Great opportunity. I think when you look at Penn, I think a family is a lot, it's about family. It's about, again, those relationships. You're naturally my own family, the Yeoman family, but also the Penn Football family. And our staffs are very, very close. It's Jane and Chris are interwoven within the Yeoman family and vice versa. And we do a lot of things together outside of football as well because my wife used to cheer. Jane was a cheerleading coach, and my wife cheered for Jane. And I can remember the boys growing up and hanging out at our house and going swimming and doing all that stuff. And when they were young, I think that's part of the whole thing. I think doing what we do, I think it's very important that those staffs are tightly woven, and because there's times it can get ugly on the outside if you're not.
All right, let's shift gears and let's talk about some of those coaches. I'm just going to throw out some names, and I'd like for you just to tell me what you think about these coaches, what you remember distinctly about them, your favorite memory with them. All right, so let's start with Chuck Wagner. Okay. A lot of people feel that Chuck Wagner is one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of Indiana high school football. I've had 2 or 3 coaches who competed against Wags, right?
I think he's better than that.
Okay.
He may be one of the best offensive line coaches collegiately as well, too, if that's what he wanted to do. A true student of the game, delved into it deeply, learned it, studied it, took extra time, visited universities and colleges, went to extra clinics, did things on his own and met with his own. Great football mind. And then naturally, there's a lot of people that know a lot of football, but to be able to mold and transcend a unit like Chuck was able to every year, when you look at those guys at the start of the season and during two-a-days and the scrimmage in the first game, and you took a look at what they turned into by the end of the season, was amazing. So it was more than just the knowledge of the game. It was also being able to convey that and work and mold those guys into something special, and the Hogs were something special every year.
One thing that Chris brought into the system about platoon football, so a lot of guys didn't play both sides of the ball, but in some key spots, games on the line, Chris and the assistant coaches may have stuck a guy in there. Did you get any reps at all playing any offensive line in some emergency situations?
As a player?
Yeah.
Yeah, naturally, I played tight end my first year and had to do some stuff some both ways, but be honest, not in games, not many of us played both ways. And I can remember back there, we were talking about before, my dad coming home after the first week and that was Chris's idea to be a 2-platoon football team. And my dad said, I don't know if we can actually pull it off here with the people we had, but Chris had a vision, and you've got to have a vision. And basically that was one of the key components of his vision. Chris would say this. Chris would say, if you ask guys in a high school, how many guys think they're the best 11 guys in the high school to play a football position? He'd say probably maybe on a team, 15 to 17 guys may think they're in that realm. But if you ask the guys, who thinks they're in the top 22 on the team? He said now the numbers swell up to upper 60s, and a lot of guys think they can hit one of the top 22 guys on the team. So now with more opportunities to play, guys buy in a little bit more. They know they have a shot. They have a shot to get on the field, not just on the field, but as a starter. And then the emphasis that were put onto special teams, and those guys actually elevating higher than maybe what the offense and defense were around here. Those opportunities were very, very special, and it was a great honor to be put on a special team. So on any given night, when we're playing on Friday nights, there may be 60, 70, 80 guys easily play in even tight ball games because of the 2-platoon system and what he instilled. And I tell you, that was huge.
Art Klinger. Talk about Coach Art Klinger, what he meant to the football program, and what did you learn from him?
Well, Art was, has some military background, and that showed out. He was very structured. Art had a flair similar to you for the video and audio, and created these great highlight films, which were motivation. Back before we had a lot of video and stuff out. It's not what the kids have today, but he created something special. Great linebacker coach, but running the scout defense and getting those guys to believe and making them excited. And if you have a great scout team, offensively and defensively, if you can instill in those guys to play that well, and actually the varsity offense or the varsity defense, if they think they are going to have it tougher on Tuesday and Wednesday versus a scout defense than they are on Friday night, great things are going to happen in that year. And then naturally, those guys believe that naturally if that's taking place, they're going to get to play a little bit more too. But being able to instill and getting those scout team defensive guys to play like they played, and all the great things he did with the conditioning stuff,